If you make less than $150,000 a year, you're not middle class anymore. You're being economically hunted. The cost of living has outpaced wages in 46 states. Credit card debt just hit $1.1 trillion. Personal savings, lowest since 2005. And over 61% of Americans now say they can't handle a $500 emergency without going into debt. You're not behind. You're being systematically drained. This isn't a crisis, it's a controlled demolition. And what's coming next will make 2008 look like a warm-up. The childcare collapse is quietly destroying generations. You ever notice how nobody talks about childcare until it's too late? Until a parent quits their job, or the daycare down the street suddenly shuts its doors for good? And the kicker? It's not even a headline. But listen, this right here is a ticking time bomb that's already gone off in slow motion, and most Americans don't realize they're standing in the blast radius. In 2021, we lost over 16,000 childcare providers, and by mid-2024, that number had ballooned to over 70,000 closures nationwide, especially in rural areas and low-income zip codes. Why? Because nobody's subsidizing this essential service. Costs are exploding, with the average family paying more than $15,000 per year per child. And in cities like San Francisco or DC, it's closer to $25,000. Let me put that in perspective. Childcare now costs more than in-state college tuition in over 40 states. And here's the sinister twist. It's not just about the cost, it's about the consequence. Working mothers are leaving the labor force in droves because what's the point of a paycheck if the daycare eats every cent? And let's not forget the providers. They're mostly women, mostly underpaid, making $13 an hour on average for one of the most critical jobs in society. Meanwhile, CEOs are raking in bonuses larger than the GDP of entire counties. So what do we end up with? A bottleneck where parents can't work, kids lose out on early education, and the next generation starts behind before they even hit kindergarten. This isn't a parenting issue. This is an economic chokehold, and it's tightening every year. If you thought inflation was bad at the grocery store, wait until you see what it's doing to the next 20 years of this country's workforce. And guess what? Congress keeps kicking the can down the road while the average American is drowning in babysitter Venmo requests and preschool waiting lists that look more like Hunger Games registries. Millions of Americans have no idea this is what's gutting their savings and careers. The new electricity crisis, gridlock, blackouts, and a broken promise. Let me hit you with something that should scare every single person watching this. Your power grid is weaker than you think, and it's about to buckle under the weight of a future it was never built for. You remember those rolling blackouts in Texas a few years ago? That wasn't a freak event. That was a warning shot, and we ignored it. Now here we are, end of 2025, and 2/3 of America's grid infrastructure is over 50 years old. Transformers, cables, substations, they're antique. And while we're busy electrifying everything from cars to HVACs to cooktops, the actual power lines that carry all that juice, they're maxed out. The U.S. Energy Information Administration just released a quiet little update. Electricity demand is expected to spike 30% by 2030, mostly thanks to EVs and AI server farms. But guess what? Grid expansion is only happening at 10% of that pace. That means brownouts, blackouts, and energy rationing are no longer what-ifs. They're locked in. And don't think solar panels on your roof will save you. If the grid goes down, so does most of your backup. Even inverters need a live grid connection unless you shelled out another 10 kW for battery storage. Meanwhile, electricity bills? Through the roof. The average U.S. household is paying $160 per month, a 25% jump in just 2 years, while utilities post record profits and shareholders toast champagne on your dime. And with major energy companies lobbying to delay grid modernization, yes, you read that right, because it would cut into short-term margins, this thing's not getting better. When the heat waves hit next summer and everyone's cranking their AC, don't be surprised when the lights go out. And if you're in California, the Midwest, or anywhere in hurricane or wildfire territory, prepare for scheduled outages and supply prioritization. In other words, you're not getting power because someone richer gets it first. Millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them, until the fridge shuts off and their insulin supply spoils. The food supply system is cracking, and it's not just about shortages anymore. All right, this one's not going to be easy to hear, but you need to. Because this isn't about doomsday prepping or inflation. This is about systemic failure, the quiet dismantling of America's food supply chain. You've probably noticed food prices going up. That's not news. But here's what nobody tells you. It's not just because of inflation. It's because the entire structure that brings food from farm to shelf is held together by duct tape and desperation. More than 60% of America's farmland is now owned by people over 65. And farmland is disappearing at the rate of 2,000 acres a day, either bought up by mega corporations or left fallow. Small and mid-sized farms are going bankrupt faster than ever. Over 10,000 closures in 2023 alone. And while the headlines focus on avocados and coffee beans, the real terror is in the basics. Wheat, corn, soy, dairy, chicken. These are the staples, and they're being consolidated into fewer hands, with just 4 corporations controlling over 80% of meat processing in the U.S. That's a monopoly, plain and simple. Add to that the climate shocks, floods in the Midwest, droughts in the Southwest, wildfires up and down California's produce corridor, and you've got crops failing year after year, with less backup every time. Fertilizer prices have doubled since 2020. Diesel shortages are hitting trucking companies. There are fewer seasonal laborers, tighter immigration rules, and guess what? AI can't milk a cow or prune an orchard, and yet, big box retailers and hedge funds are still treating food like a Wall Street product, gambling on futures while families decide between eggs and gas. This isn't about eating less. This is about losing access entirely. And if you think food stamps or school lunch programs will cover the gap, remember, they're tied to budgets that Congress can freeze at any moment. Millions of Americans don't realize how close we are to food deserts, not just in poor communities, but everywhere. It's already started. The quiet death of homeownership, you'll own nothing and not by choice. Let's talk about the American dream. The house, the yard, the mailbox with your name on it. Yeah, that thing, it's dying. And I mean flatlining, not in theory, but in real time. You've probably heard housing prices are high, but let's dig deeper. The median home in the U.S. just hit $420,000. Want to buy that? Cool. The bank wants you to put down $84,000 just to start. Oh, and have a credit score over 720, a debt-to-income ratio under 36%, and job security in a market where layoffs are up 40% year over year. Now let's say you're a unicorn and you qualify. That mortgage? With interest rates hovering near 7.5%, you're looking at $3,000 per month before taxes, insurance, or repairs. And here's the trick. Even if you own your home, you don't really. Miss a property tax payment? The state takes it. Fall behind on HOA fees? Foreclosure? Want to pass it on to your kids? Get ready for inheritance taxes and legal headaches. Meanwhile, corporations like BlackRock and Invitation Homes are buying entire neighborhoods, sight unseen, and renting them back to you for $3,200 a month. No equity, no ownership, no future. Renters now make up nearly 40% of U.S. households, and that number is rising. And don't even talk about starter homes. Those vanished a decade ago. What used to be a 1-200 SQFT house for $90K is now a teardown worth $360K with no appliances. And the new builds? Cookie-cutter nightmares, thin walls, high fees, and no land. We're not looking at a housing crisis. We're looking at a housing regime shift, where the concept of ownership is being replaced with corporate feudalism. And if you think that's extreme, just wait until you try to renew your lease and find out your rent jumped 20%. Again, millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them because they still think homeownership is a ladder. But they don't see that the rungs are being sawed off one by one. Nobody wants to say it out loud, but I will. Social Security is already broken. And I don't mean it might break in the future. I mean the cracks are here, and millions of people just haven't felt the shatter yet. Let's start with the math. The Social Security Trust Fund, the lifeline of retirement for over 71 million Americans, is projected to run out of full funding by 2033. That's not some conspiracy. That's straight from the Social Security Board of Trustees. And when that day hits, automatic cuts will kick in, up to 23% across the board. So if you thought $1,600 a month was hard to survive on, try doing it with $1,230. But here's the dirty part. They've already started rationing it. They're tightening up disability approvals, slowing claim processing times, and quietly encouraging seniors to delay retirement to maximize benefits. Translation: work till you die. And while retirees are struggling to afford groceries, Congress is debating whether to raise the retirement age to 70. Think about that. You bust your back for 50 years, only to be told, just hang on another decade, Grandpa, we'll get to you. Meanwhile, inflation keeps chewing through fixed incomes like termites in drywall. Medicare doesn't cover dental, vision, or hearing, the basics of aging, and out-of-pocket healthcare expenses for seniors have jumped 45% since 2010. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Corporate pensions are dead. 90% of Americans now rely solely on Social Security and what they've been able to squirrel away in their 401k, which, let's be honest, got decimated in 2022, again in 2024, and it's not looking good heading into 2026. Retirement isn't a golden age anymore. It's a slow bleed, and the younger generations are waking up to a brutal truth. You're paying into a system that may not be there for you. But nobody wants to talk about that at the dinner table. Millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them until they check the mailbox and find their retirement is just a bill with a bow on it. The healthcare trap. High premiums, low coverage, no escape. Healthcare in America is not a safety net. It's a bear trap, and every one of us is stepping in it, slowly, carefully, until snap. That's the sound of a medical emergency you didn't see coming. The average American is now paying $8,435 per year in premiums for employer-based health insurance. And that doesn't include the $1,600 deductible, the co-pays, the specialist fees, or the out-of-network death traps that insurance companies build like landmines in your plan. And God help you if you're uninsured. One ambulance ride is $3,000. A single night in the hospital, $11,700 on average. Need insulin? Be ready to cough up $300, $500 a month, unless you're lucky enough to be in one of the few states with price caps. And let's be real, it's not just the cost, it's the rigged game. Insurance providers are denying more claims than ever before. In 2022, nearly 18% of in-network claims were denied, and in 2024, that number jumped again. These are life-saving treatments, rejected because they're not medically necessary, according to an algorithm. We now have AI bots deciding if you deserve cancer care. Let that sink in. And it's not like you can shop around. Try calling a hospital and asking what something costs. You'll be transferred 6 times and still never get a real answer. Why? Because they legally don't have to tell you, even though they receive millions in federal funding. It's a cartel. Hospitals, insurers, and pharmaceutical giants locking in profits, jacking up prices, and leaving working Americans to pick between rent and Remicade. Even worse, medical debt is now the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy in America. Over 100 million adults have some form of healthcare debt. Many didn't even know they had a bill until collections came knocking. And when you go to pay it off, guess what? The interest rate is higher than a credit card. Millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them until they walk into the ER and realize they're not a patient. They're a profit center. The AI job displacement bomb. It's not the future, it's right now. If you're still thinking AI is going to someday take your job, I hate to break it to you. It already did. You just haven't been told yet. We're not talking about some future Jetsons nonsense. We're talking about right now, November 2025, and the layoffs happening across every sector. JP Morgan just replaced 1,000 back-office finance roles with AI. Walmart, testing AI-powered customer service that doesn't need sick days or paychecks. In 2024 alone, over 3 million white-collar jobs were either eliminated or restructured, thanks to automation. And it's not just desk jobs. AI is now writing copy, generating code, processing insurance claims, editing video, analyzing legal briefs, interpreting radiology scans, and managing supply chains. And they're getting better, exponentially better. OpenAI just launched a new enterprise model that can take on entire departments. That's not hype, that's happening. And if you think you're safe because your job involves creativity, human judgment, or nuance, wake up. AI now writes scripts, paints, sings, composes music, and even crafts legal arguments. It doesn't sleep, doesn't unionize, doesn't ask for raises, which means the capitalist machine, it's hooked. And guess who's funding this revolution? The same companies that are laying people off, the same firms that preach innovation while replacing 20-year employees with an API call. And don't get it twisted. This isn't just about tech bros. This is about every American. You drive a truck? Tesla's autonomous freight division is online. You do data entry? Chatbots handle that. You process claims, schedule meetings, transcribe audio, design logos, monitor inventory? Gone. And no, we're not creating more jobs than we destroy. That's a myth. Most of the new jobs require advanced degrees, technical skills, and geographic mobility that most people simply don't have. Millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them, until the pink slip comes not from their boss, but from a line of code. Digital currency and the end of cash. Financial freedom is being rewritten in code. You've probably heard whispers about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and maybe you brushed them off. Sounds technical, futuristic, something the Fed might roll out in 10 years, right? Wrong. The infrastructure is already live. The FedNow system launched in 2023 is the first phase. It's sold to you as instant payments, but what it really is a Trojan horse. They're not digitizing currency to make things faster. They're doing it to make it trackable, to make it programmable. And that means every transaction you make, from a $5 coffee to your rent, can be seen, stored, and potentially restricted. You think that's paranoia? China's digital yuan already limits how long certain funds can be held, or where they can be spent. Canada froze protesters' bank accounts in 2022 without a court order. This isn't science fiction, it's a preview. And once cash is phased out, which is already happening with banks closing branches, ATMs vanishing, and retailers refusing paper bills, you are locked into the system. Imagine missing a payment and your digital wallet won't activate. Imagine buying something flagged by an algorithm and your transaction gets denied. Want to donate to a political cause? Want to buy prepper gear? Too bad it's non-compliant. And they'll say, don't worry, it's for your safety. But safety isn't freedom. It's a leash. It's complete financial control, down to the dollar. And if you think crypto will save you, look what happened when the IRS started demanding exchanges report every wallet over $600. Privacy is being engineered out of existence. And with programmable currency, they won't need laws to restrict you. They'll use software, quiet, invisible, and automatic. You will be assigned a wallet, a score, a limit, and you will live inside that box or be cut off. Millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them because they still think money is just a piece of paper. But the future? The future's a switch, and someone else is holding the breaker. The hidden tax nobody talks about. Inflation is permanent. Now, everyone keeps waiting for prices to come back down. I hate to be the one to say it, but they're not. And it's not just because of COVID or supply chains or greedy corporations or some politician you don't like. It's because the system is built to inflate permanently. Since 2020, over 40% of all US dollars in existence were printed. Let that sink in. Nearly half the money supply was created in just a few years. And no, that's not a TikTok conspiracy. That's from the Federal Reserve's own M2 data. So when you wonder why eggs went from $1.25 to $4.00, why rent went from $900 to $1,800, why your car insurance is up 40%, it's not a coincidence. It's the result of injecting $6 trillion into the economy without increasing production. More money, same goods. Result? Prices go up, and they stay up. Corporations didn't just raise prices because they could. They did it because they had to keep pace with the new value of the dollar. And then they just kept going. And now the Fed is trapped. Raise rates, and you crash the economy. Cut rates, and you spike inflation again. So they're doing this dance. 2% inflation targets, soft landings, economic models. But the reality on the ground? You already know it. Your paycheck doesn't stretch. Your savings are shrinking. And every time the Fed raises rates to cool inflation, you pay more on your credit cards, mortgages, auto loans, and student debt. This isn't accidental. It's engineered. Inflation is a hidden tax, and it hurts the poor and middle class the most. Every year, your dollars buy less. Every year, you work harder for the same standard of living, or worse. And still, politicians smile on TV and tell you the economy is strong. Yeah? Then why are over 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck? Why are 24 million families skipping meals? Why is credit card debt over $1.1 trillion, the highest in U.S. history? Because this isn't a blip. It's the new model. And millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them, because what's hitting them is already here. They just haven't done the math. The war no one declared, class warfare in broad daylight. We are living through a class war, and most people don't even realize it. This isn't about rich versus poor in some abstract philosophical sense. This is tactical. This is happening every single day, every paycheck, every eviction notice, every student loan bill, every 70-hour work week with no time off. The top 1% now controls over 31% of all U.S. wealth, while the bottom 50%, they share just 2.5%. That's not inequality. That's a caste system. And the people at the top, they're not just rich, they're untouchable. They don't pay income tax like you. They don't get foreclosed on. They don't fill out FAFSA. They make money on money. And they own the institutions that decide how your life works. Wall Street, Washington, the media, the Fed. Don't believe me? Let's look at the facts. Corporate profits are at record highs, while worker productivity is up, but real wages are down. They've convinced you to hustle harder while they raise prices and blame you for not budgeting right. Billionaires added $2 trillion to their net worth since 2020. You got a $600 stimulus check and a 17% rent hike. That's the trade-off. And every tool you once had to build wealth, they've taken it. Homeownership is out of reach. College guarantees nothing but debt. Investing feels like a gamble. Savings accounts lose value every year. And while they live behind gates and offshore tax shelters, you're rationing groceries and begging for PTO. The worst part? They've convinced half the country to fight each other instead of fighting the system. Left versus right, red versus blue, urban versus rural. While we scream at each other, they're buying second yachts. This isn't about envy. This is about survival. This is about dignity. This is about the American dream being sold off in pieces, and millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them, because they still think it's a storm. It's not. It's a structure, and it was built to keep them on the outside looking in. This isn't a cycle. This isn't temporary. This is the new reality, and most people won't see it until it's too damn late. Their rent will double. Their job will vanish. Their savings will disappear, and they'll still be waiting for things to go back to normal. But nothing is going back, because this is the plan. Make you work more, own less, and blame yourself while the top 1% carves up what's left. You're not safe, you're not stable, and if you're still hoping someone's coming to fix it for you, they're not. Millions of Americans have no idea what's about to hit them. But you do now. So what are you going to do about it?